Over the years, the video games industry has treated audiences to some bloody horrible boys and girls. Whether they're intent on taking over the world, destroying it, or just kidnapping an unwilling princess, there are loads of awful folks out there that we gamers just love to hate. But what makes a good baddie? Well, it's hard to say for sure, but if players want to come back time and time again to face off against them despite all their wrongdoings, then we'd say that makes them a pretty successful wrong'un in our book. We've already looked at the sassiest villains and the most terrifying ones, but we've never definitively decided which baddies are the absolute best of the best. Or should that be worst of the worst? We'll let you be the judge, it's more of an SEO thing. For this list then, we're looking back at the entirety of gaming history to bring you the 10 bad guys or girls that we believe are the greatest ever to grace our PCs and consoles. We'll probably be entering Spoilerville, so take this as your warning, and maybe avoid the comment section for this one because there will be a lot of angry people, I suspect. I'm the dastardly Peter from TripleJump, and here are the 10 best video game villains of all time. Number 10. Pyramid Head, Silent Hill 2. I've lost count of the number of times I've had to euthanize my spouse and ended up manifesting all my guilt in the form of some grotesque bloke with a huge knife, so I can fully sympathize with what James Sunderland had to go through in Silent Hill 2. Oh dear, classic. 3 years after the death of his beloved spouse, Sunderland journeys to the eponymous town of Silent Hill in order to figure out just why he's received a letter from her telling him that she's awaiting his arrival. Whilst there, James encounters the sheer nightmare fuel that is Pyramid Head, a hulking beast of a man that wields a huge blade and stalks our hero throughout the game. As villains go, Pyramid Head is certainly a force to be reckoned with. Created by James's mind as a punishment for killing his wife, he relentlessly torments the protagonist, and until the latter is able to come to terms with what he's done, Pyramid Head is almost completely indestructible. Unlike some of the other entries on this list, Pyramid Head doesn't have any grand scheme or madcap plot to destroy the world. He's just a monster intent on terminating James Sunderland. Despite his humble motivations though, he's an utterly terrifying adversary that sticks in the mind of players long after the credits roll, and that, dear viewers, is what makes him a truly iconic video game villain. Number 9. Dr. Robotnik, Sonic the Hedgehog series. If someone were ever to author a book titled Becoming a Video Game Villain for Dummies, then you just know that Dr. Robotnik, aka Eggman of Sonic the Hedgehog fame, would have read it from cover to cover on multiple occasions. After all, he's pretty much got everything on the horrible Git checklist covered. Evil genius with a bizarre yet instantly recognizable look? Check. Lofty dreams of world domination? Also check. Weird aversion to adorable fluffy creatures? Okay, the last one probably isn't in any sort of bad guy manual, but you can be sure that Robotnik has it very much checked regardless. Players first meet Dr. Robotnik in 1991's Sonic the Hedgehog, during which he set out to collect the 6 Chaos Emeralds and turn all of South Island's helpless critters into an army of robots. Jesus, can someone call the RSPCA? Luckily, Sonic was on hand to thwart his maniacal scheme and return peace to the island. However, in doing so, he did earn himself an arch-nemesis. Since then, Robotnik has shown up every few years with another ridiculous scheme to try and take over the world. It's just unfortunate that he's clearly funneled all of his funds into moustache maintenance rather than, proper planning, since it usually takes little more than the efforts of a small blue hedgehog to send him packing once again. Number 8. Sephiroth, Final Fantasy VII. The Final Fantasy series is absolutely littered with villains, and you can't seem to go 10 minutes before tripping over someone who's guilty of some wrongdoing or another. However, the worst of the worst has to be Final Fantasy VII's Sephiroth. Though he wears more leather than your average 80s rock band and has the hair to match, Sephiroth is one heck of a nasty dude. He started out as a fairly good guy, but after discovering he was the product of a biological experiment which fused a fetus with Genova, he turned to the dark side. Wanting to follow in Mummy's footsteps, he goes full-on megalomaniac and attempts to take over the world. Not only does Sephiroth have some major delusions of grandeur, I mean seriously, he should probably speak to a therapist, but he's also an incredibly accomplished fighter, able to wield both the outlandishly large Masamune as well as unspeakable supernatural powers passed on from his goddess mother. As much as we admire his power, however, we'll probably never forgive the scumbag for just straight up murdering our sweet companion Aerith. She was all that was pure and good in the world, and you are a mean man, Sephiroth. Number 7. Andrew Ryan, BioShock. For some of us, the idea of having our very own city sounds great. Oh, what's that? Mandatory donut breaks every day at 11 AM? That's what every citizen gets in Peterland. Sadly, the sort of people with the money to make such a move are more likely to end up building a place like Rapture, the underwater city that provides the setting for BioShocks 1 and 2. Rapture was founded by Andrew Ryan, a self-made bajillionaire who was sick of the communism that he believed to be spreading throughout America. Though he was rich in wealth, Ryan was morally bankrupt, and those coming to Rapture were basically allowed to do as they pleased, as long as they were doing so in order to make something of themselves. Naturally, the whole thing fell apart. After all, there's only so long a city can sustain itself when every citizen is completely selfish, and Ryan himself was undone by Frank Fontaine, a man who was simply adhering to the tenets of self-interest that Rapture was built upon. In spite of everything though, we can't help but admire Andrew Ryan. He had a vision, and he went for it, his critics be damned. Admittedly, it was a completely insane vision, but hey, at least the man never let the haters get him down. We could all do with taking a leaf out of Andrew Ryan's book. Never thought I'd say that. Number 6. Vars Montenegro, Far Cry 3. Some of you thought this guy would be number 1, and he's not, and you're going to be very cross. I'm sorry. If you've been working hard, as we do here at TripleJump Towers, you might be considering taking a long, relaxing holiday on a tropical desert island somewhere. That is, unless you've played Far Cry 3, in which case, the thought probably fills you with dread, thanks to all-round nasty man, Vars Montenegro. Player's first introduction to Vars is when he kidnaps protagonist Jason Brody and his friends in order to sell them into slavery before murdering Jason's brother Grant right before his very eyes. He then spends the rest of the game tormenting Jason and trying to kill him too in various horrible ways. The right-hand man of crime boss Hoyt Volker, Vars and his pirate buddies spend their days making life hell for the people of Rook Islands. Aside from his murderous tendencies, he's also involved in various other illicit activities, such as drugs and the aforementioned human trafficking. Definitely not a guy you'd want to bring home to meet your granny. What makes Vars such a compelling and at times downright terrifying villain is his intensity and unpredictability. Every moment players spend with Vars is hugely tense, as he can go from calm and collected to having a full-on meltdown in mere seconds. Sounds to me like he just needs a nice cup of chamomile tea, to be honest. Either that or a nice holiday on a tropical island. Oh wait, no, that wouldn't work, would it? Number 5. Albert Wesker, Resident Evil series. I believe it was Heath Ledger's Joker that said, "Some men just want to set the world on fire." Am I confusing my franchises there? No, that's right, that's accurate. And though in that instance he was very much singing about himself, he might just as easily have been referring to Resident Evil's sunglasses-wearing asshat, Albert Wesker. Players are first introduced to Wesker in 1996's Resident Evil, and are initially led to believe that he's on their side. Throughout the game, he seemingly assists Chris and Jill, even leaving them items to help them survive the mansion. Talk about commitment to the bit, am I right? It's only in the game's final act, though, that his true colours are actually revealed. That he's really a double agent and wants to bring about a mass extinction of the human population. He fakes his own death and uses himself as a test subject, injecting Christ knows what viruses into himself in order to further the cause. He's certainly focused. Yeah, we'll give him that. In our opinion, it's his initial duplicity that makes him such a great villain, as despite the fact that he's actually in league with Umbrella and is intent on destroying mankind, he has us all thinking that he's not actually insane for most of Resident Evil's runtime. Sadly though, he is completely bonkers and only gets nuttier as the games go on. Number 4. Handsome Jack, Borderlands 2. Oh no, it's another one a bunch of you thought would be in the number 1 spot. It's getting really heated in the comments, guys. The problem with creating a fantastic megalomaniacal genius like Handsome Jack is that any attempt to create a similar villain since then just pales in comparison. The Calypso twins of Borderlands 3 fame were fine and all, but they weren't Handsome Jack, were they? Although Jack is a narcissistic dictator and is very much doing everything in his power to unalive the player during the events of Borderlands 2, his clever quips and charismatic persona provide endless entertainment throughout the game. Though we first meet Jack in the series' second game, not a lot is revealed about his backstory until the pre-sequel, where players learn that he had originally been on the side of the Vault Hunters before being betrayed by Moxie, Lilith, and Roland, and setting out on his path to total domination. Despite Handsome Jack's numerous deplorable actions, however, players can't help but feel a little bad when, at the end of the game, they're forced to put a bullet in his head. Yes, he was a pretty awful bloke, and yes, he has spent pretty much the entire game calling us mean names and trying to kill us, but who's gonna look after Butt Stallion once he's gone? Number 3. GLaDOS, Portal. If anyone's looking for a good reason as to why scientists should stop any efforts to try and create true artificial intelligence, then GLaDOS is surely it. Admittedly, Chell's journey through the numerous Aperture Science test chambers wouldn't have been nearly as entertaining without the snarky, slightly unhinged GLaDOS chiming in at every turn, but then again, without her, Chell probably wouldn't have even ended up there in the first place. Despite her many crimes though, which include but are not limited to unleashing a neurotoxin upon the inhabitants of the Aperture Science Enrichment Center and attempting to incinerate Chell in a pit of fire, we can't help but find GLaDOS somewhat endearing. Perhaps it's her never-ending stream of cutting remarks, her almost soothing yet somewhat sinister voice, or her willingness, nay eagerness, to gas annoying co-workers. There's just something about her that we can't help but love. It's true, she did also force players to rather traumatically incinerate their beloved companion cubes, may they all rest in peace, but we can forgive her for that on account of the fact that she's promised us there will be cake once all this is over. I can't wait, I absolutely love cake. There's definitely going to be a cake, isn't there, guys? Number 2. Ganon, the Legend of Zelda series. You've got to give it to Ganon. The guy certainly has some lofty ambitions. After all, I don't see anyone else on this list plotting to steal an omnipotent artifact on the regular so they can use it to grant themselves power over an entire kingdom. Well, aside from Robotnik, but he loses points for having such a daft moustache, so there. Ever since he was introduced in 1986's The Legend of Zelda, Ganon, also known as Ganondorf or Calamity Ganon, has proven to be a massive thorn in Hyrule's side. Though his motivations do vary between titles, generally Ganon can be counted on to ruin everyone's day by kidnapping Princess Zelda and attempting to steal the Triforce of Courage and Triforce of Wisdom, objects which, when combined with the Triforce of Power, create an artifact that will grant divine strength to whomever possesses it. What makes him such a fantastic villain is the fact that he's the embodiment of pure evil, and like the evil in our own world, when one form is defeated, rather terrifyingly, there will always be another to rise up and take its place. Even so, he stands as a reminder that people can always come together and overcome adversity, which, for a 35-year-old blue pig, really is something quite special, to be honest. And number 1, Bowser, Mario series. Although he may not be the baddest of the bad, there is no video game villain more iconic than the Mario series' Bowser. If nothing else, there's no one with more staying power, as everyone's favourite dastardly Koopa has been thoroughly cheesing off Mario and chums since his first appearance in Super Mario Bros. In 1985. As the leader of the Koopa race, Bowser can always be relied upon to ruin everyone's day, whether he's trying to kidnap Princess Peach, defeat Mario, Mario or take over the Mushroom Kingdom. Unlike the other entries on this list, and despite his slightly intimidating appearance, he's not a particularly violent dude, and though abducting your crush is definitely not an okay thing to do and will certainly get you in trouble with the authorities, we're at least glad he's not going around destroying things or murdering innocent folks. No matter what he gets up to, however, Bowser always gets his ass handed to him by Mario, Luigi, and the gang in the end. In our opinion, there is no villain more recognizable than Bowser, and although we definitely wouldn't recommend anyone follow in his rather large footsteps, I think we can all agree that in Bowser's case, sometimes it's good to be bad.